I'll let you. If you need it, it's yours.
No, I really did.
I keep giving away more for less, Evans.
Mike, where's your sense of humor?
I'm sorry, I was...
He's sorry, he was ignoring you.
What I'm to talk about today, is water levels. We try to do this once every 6 months and come and give a board briefing. And I saw Jim Steiner last Friday, and his instructions were that I better bring better news this time than I did last time. So I'll let you all be the judge of whether we were successful in that. But just a reminder of how the system works in Harris Chain in particular. There's 3 structures. One down here at the Popka Clare Canal that controls the water level in Lake Popka. The other, the Burrell structure that kind of controls the water level in what we call the super pond. It's Dora, Eustis, Beauclair, and then the Moss Bluff structure web here, which really controls what comes out of Lake Griffin. And it's important to know that the structures have been closed, not moving any water, since April 27, 2012. So we're coming up on 2 years now that there has been no flow through the structures. But let's take a look at the water levels in particular. And if we look at Lake Apopka, this is the dark line is the current water level. This would be minimum desirable. That would be if there was sufficient water where the regulatory schedule would be. And then this is maximum desirable. You can see with Lake Apopka that even currently it's still about 1.8 feet below the regulatory level. So there's still a good distance for it to go. What this reflects on the bottom is rainfall and rainfall events that we've had a couple of fairly decent rainfall events in the past week or so. And the lakes do respond. You'll see a little bit differently in some of the other lakes, but they're all driven by rainfall, and the Water Management District is trying to keep as much water in as they can, and that's why the structures are closed, but it really doesn't allow for any flow through the system. If we look at the super pond, the good news with the super pond is that it's actually above minimum desirable now. And it flirted with minimum desirable for a while, and then actually with these recent rainfall events, it's actually pushed above minimum desirable. It's still below regulatory level, but it's above minimum desirable, so that might be a little bit of a silver lining behind some of the clouds. If we look at Lake Griffin has just reached and has maintained minimum desirable now for a couple of about a week or so, and that's all again because of the rainfall that occurred. Generally, we have 2 wet seasons. There's a little baby wet season in the spring, March, April time frame, and then generally the real wet season occurs in the spring and the summer, the 3 months during the summertime. So hopefully, if we can get the lakes at least not to be as far below the levels that they've been, that we might actually be able to see some recovery. If we look at it for the past year, this is getting to Jim Steiner's direction, to show better results than it was this time last year. I think we're seeing it. Last year at Popka, for example, we were at 63.5. Now we're about 64.5. So we're about a foot higher in Apopka. And generally, it rings true for the other lake systems as well. So we're about a foot higher this time of year than we were last year. The downside, those are still well below the regulatory schedule. And it's unlikely the district will open up those structures and allow flow until the lake levels return closer to the regulatory levels. So good news is we're better than we were last year. The downside, unfortunately, is that we aren't even close to regulatory. We've heard people say this past year that we had a lot of rain. How come the lakes haven't recovered? And in fact, it's really not the case. That last year, for 2013, we were actually 11 inches below average rainfall. And we've been below average rainfall since 2006. 2005 was the last time we even edged up above average rainfall of the year. So, and some of those years were pretty significant, 17 inches, 13 inches, 11 inches. it's a pretty significant deficit to the point where we've actually still have a cumulative rainfall deficit countywide of about 63.28 inches, which is almost 5 1/4, a little bit more than 5 1/4 feet of rain that did not occur. And the way we get to that, it's a little hard to see this, but it's we have 5 gauging stations throughout the county, and one of the things I wanted to point out in particular is the Emerald is the one that's up closest to Lake Yale. And if I zoom in on that one, that's for the past 3 years, those have been significantly below average rainfall. It's been dry in the northern part of the county, and those of you that have constituents in that part of the county know that they're getting a little concerned, a little nervous, and a little anxious about what's going to happen to their lake system, Lake Yale in particular. I wish we could give them a smoking gun other than lack of rainfall, but that's really what they're just going to have to be patient, and hopefully we will have rain again. I'm no more clairvoyant than anybody else, but it's rained before in Florida. It's likely it's going to again. We'll just have to be patient, hopefully, and see if we can have the lakes recover. We also wanted to show you a little bit about the Claremont chain, our neighbors to the south. This is for the past year. But the Claremont chain, we use Lake Minnehaha as a reference lake for the Claremont chain, and it's about a foot, almost a foot and a quarter higher now, now than it was at this time last year. So there's some good news down there too. The downside of that is it's still a little bit more than 3 feet below the bottom end of our regulatory range that we'd like to be able to keep those lakes in. So there's a significant amount of rainfall that needs to occur. And I went through this last time, but it still rings true that we have people saying all the time that I've been here for 5 years now, and this is the worst that I've ever seen it. And in reality, it's not. That it's been worse. It's been better, but it's been worse. Recently, 2009 and 2012, that the lakes were down a little bit, another foot or so where they are currently. So there's it's all about a matter of perspective, and if you've been here, those of us that have been around since 2000 or later, since 2000, know that the worst of the worst really occurred in 2002. It was the lakes were about 10 feet below the regulatory range at that point, and because the lakes are shaped much like more like a saucer than they are a bowl, a little bit of distance vertically turns in a whole bunch of distance horizontally, and the water recedes well past their property line, well past their docks. But it's not nearly as bad as it's been. And if you look at the period of record, for example, so somebody's been keeping records since 1945 for rainfall, and I drew this line based on where the lake level is today. You can see that it's hit those the same period or the same levels in the past. That it's not. This is kind of unprecedented. This is the worst of the worst it's ever seen. And the interesting thing is that it was record drought followed by a year of record rainfall that put us back into flooding conditions within 1 year. So it's really all about rainfall, and it seems that every 20 years or so that you get that periodic drought conditions. Meteorologists and climatologists like to describe it as the multi-decadal Atlantic oscillation, which means every 20 years or so something occurs out in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, I don't think it's necessarily related to El Nino, but it's something similar to that out in the Atlantic, that every 20 years or so you're going to get those dry conditions, and it seems to be falling fairly true here, that with the exception of this, that's the one thing that's hard for anybody to explain, that it's not typical and it's not normal. And I'll have to say I'm not sure what normal is anymore. I don't use the word normal, I use the word average when we talk about rainfall. And maybe this is a new normal. Maybe we're starting to come into some sort of. I'm not a huge believer yet of global warming, but I think there must be something going on. We haven't gotten tropical activity in our area since 2004, 2005. All the tropical activity seems to be moving to the north, and and we seem to be dodging all of that, and that's really what historically has provided the rainfall that keeps the lakes high. Has been those periodic high-intensity rainfall events like a tropical activity, tropical storm, tropical depression, hopefully not a hurricane. I'd like to avoid all that. So that's, I guess my message is that we've seen it before. Hopefully the rains will return, and that's our, I can't make it rain as much as I tried. I've got such poor rhythm trying to do a rain dance that I probably caused the travel more than anything else. So I would just tell your constituents that sit tight, let's see what the summer brings us. Nobody is letting water out, nobody is piping it away. It's just all about rainfall.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any questions?
Question.
Yes.
Question and a comment. The 474 project, can you give us a status on that?
Yeah, we actually have received the bids for it, and it's actually a little bit south of 474. What he's describing, what Commissioner Parks is describing, is we identified a series of undersized or damaged culverts related to an old tram road a little bit south of 474. That the concern was that it was short-circuiting water around a wetland that wouldn't allow it to move north. So we did a design and put out the bid, and we recently received the bids, and hope to award that bid this month at our board meeting, be able to begin that construction as quickly as possible, try to capture any rainfall that we get this summer. So we replaced about 32 culverts in that area, and hope to be able to move some water north.
Just a follow-up question again, still got a comment, but appreciate Jim Stiver, I think his crew helped with some of the survey elevations on that, right? So I appreciate that, but I guess, maybe I'll express this personally to each, or individually to each of the board members, but I hope that they will move forward with that and see the value in supporting